All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer questions, give philosophical perspectives, formulate and explore arguments, and deep dive into particular topics of your choice. This is another special one from Ian asking me to review the TV show from Adult Swim, Xavier, Renegade, Angel. This is a season 1 review. I haven't seen season 2 yet, but he asked me to watch the whole show and do a play by play. There's only 2 seasons. Each one is 10 episodes, and they're just 11-minute episodes. So, what is Xavier Renegade Angel about? The quick summary is that it follows the misadventures of the titular protagonist, I suppose. Kind of blurs the line a little bit, of Xavier, who is this physically and emotionally gross pseudo-intellectual New Age spiritualist who just wanders from town to town, on ostensibly on some kind of quest to find his father's killer. We won't plot spoil that plot line, but he is almost entirely there's almost nothing likable about him at all, except that he's unintentionally funny. He is narcissistic and solipsistic almost to the point of absurdity. But he believes he's well intentioned, and he's always horny. And he always leaves everyone, with like a few exceptions, far worse than he found them. Now, the show as a whole makes fun of a variety of different kind of spiritual inclinations. Like there's a little bit of Christian Science in there. There's like therapy in general. What was the episode, the Chief Beef Loco one, which also brings multi-level marketing into the. We won't get too much into the details of the show. It is worth watching. I'll say that. It makes fun of Native American spiritualism. That's like a through line thing. I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen much more mockery of Eastern spiritualism, but it's kind of tacit in that whole New Age mode of pseudo spirituality, and it in a rather spectacular manner makes fun of punk anarchism too. It's extraordinary that the show came out in 2007. It feels very ahead of its time. It's a very postmodern show, and by postmodern I mean there's no good characters. Like Xavier, our heroic protagonist, is particularly bad, but there's no one else in the show who's like good, right? And what it really does, which is particularly postmodern, is it exposes the selfishness behind the supposed benevolent and good intentions that are stated by the protagonist in this case. The phrase "good intention" is actually the title of one of the episodes, a particularly bad one, called "The Sixth Teat of Good Intentions," which I think is like the third or fourth one. Basically, Xavier, he's this strange Birdman character who's got like a beak, but he's also like furry, and his legs are backwards, so he walks like a dog. It's very unnerving. But one of his hands is like a snake from the elbow down. It's just this snake that you'd think would be more useful in a fight, because like every fight that Xavier gets into, he loses quite badly. But yeah, this snake ends up. Well, I'll plot spoil this episode slightly. He comes across this woman that he's immediately like very sexually attracted to, right? But she's got like 8 kids, and he takes 7 of them because he somehow forgot that they were hers and thought that they had just been abandoned while she was taking one on the slide. And so he's going to take care of them in this underground sewer lair. But his snake hand starts eating them. And like his self-talk is like, oh no, this is terrible, you give that baby back. But like if you step back and think about what's going on holistically, this is lion behavior or bear behavior, where like the male lion will kill the cubs of a female in order to from another lion, right, in order to get her to go into heat again, right? And it's that behavior, but it's wrapped up in all this, oh no, how could this happen, like spiritualist language of good intentions gone awry. So anyways, it's postmodern in its exploration and exposition of the selfish intentions behind stated good most, but it's also postmodern in the way it plays with language. There's a lot of linguistic humor, and it's not just linguistic humor, it's very densely packed linguistic humor. Like if you blink, you'll miss it. And it's not like cutscene quick pace. It's somehow smooth, but he'll say things like, the prophecy is foretold. By definition, a prophecy is that which is foretold. And it'll just carry on as if nothing happened. I think it's worth dwelling a little bit and bring in some theory into talking about Xavier, as you might have guessed from the title here. Xavier, as a character, fits in very nicely into a category that philosopher Vox Day has created in his sociosexual hierarchy, which is, if you've ever heard of the phrase alphas and sigmas, that comes from Vox Day, right? He's never credited as the creator of that because people don't want to associate with him for some reason, but it's not, I mean, people have been talking about alphas from the world of anthropology for a while, but where human interactions are concerned, talking about alphas in the context of wolves and stuff doesn't make much sense. Vox Day's social sexual hierarchy improves alphas, betas, deltas, gammas, omegas, and sigmas. And you can go and read up on the breakdown of these things. A lot of people like to home in on the alpha and the sigma as like these, pack leader or the lone wolf archetype. There's something very romantic about it. There's also something very questionable about the sigma type. But Vox Day himself found the gamma to be in many ways the most interesting archetype, because and what these roles represent is positions in the male status hierarchy for humans. And alphas are, of course, the leaders. They sleep with lots of women. They're often kind of psychopathic, but they also make things work and make things run. And they're a good example of the old military saying, someone who you could trust them with your life, but not your money or your wife. Kind of that vibe. I would. Donald Trump is obviously an alpha. Many front men, like singers for bands, are kind of alphas. Betas are like lieutenants. They're supporters, and enforcers. They're strong supporters of alphas, and they're in like Congress. They're like the whips. They like make sure everyone is in line. They're also fairly successful with women, and they're considered very highly ranked because they're valued by the alphas. Deltas are in some ways the least interesting and also the most important, and they're the ones that, more even than the alphas, Vox Day seems to venerate and praise the deltas. Not necessarily envy, because, not exactly a just world, but deltas make the world go round. They value hard work. They value being morally decent. They're sometimes a little bit naive about women, but they're decent people, and they're not social outcasts, by any stretch of the imagination. They can be a little bit resentful at the injustice of the world, but they're still fundamentally decent people generally. And Delta is sort of the archetype that Vox Day says, if you want to aspire to anything, Delta might be the one to aspire, but that's probably the wrong frame, because he says these are not prescriptive, they're descriptive archetypes. You probably are what you are. Omegas, the real joke would be to Gen X it and just not mention Omegas at all. Because Omegas are the social outcasts. They say, the way he describes it is, Gammas are the ones that you wish weren't at the party, but they are. And they make people feel a little bit uncomfortable. Omega's the ones that no one, they weren't just forgotten. No one thought to invite them to the party. And if someone had, it would be weird. Like, they're the social outcasts. No, they're just sad shut-ins, alone, hermits, whatever. But Gammas, we won't mention Sigmas. Sigmas are an odd case, and they're kind of dubious in my opinion. But Gammas tend to be more intelligent than average. They tend to be subject matter experts, but they are low on the status totem pole. And this leads to a lot of resentment, because they think the world is not rewarding me for my superior intelligence. And they can be, but because they're low status, they can't attack the top directly. This is basically, for all the negative things he said about Nietzsche, because Vox Day is very much not a fan of Nietzsche. To put him out, he's basically rediscovered Nietzsche's theory of raisonnement, but given them archetypal names, which is useful. The Gamma is very much the like personification of Nietzsche's raisonnement. It's they are destructive in a corrosive, subversive kind of way, and women often can very quickly identify Gammas much easier than men can. Men will be like, oh yeah, this guy's like a really good programmer, and a woman will be like that guy viscerally gives me the ick. Gammas, if we want to talk physiology, they tend to be a little bit shorter than average, maybe a little bit out of shape, tend towards balding, No, not always. You can't take these generalized things as rules, but there are patterns. So let's bring it back to Xavier. Xavier almost doesn't qualify because he's so profoundly unself-aware. But the depiction of his story arc and the way he goes about things conveys this deeper resentment through his actions, even if he, in his own like perpetual self-narration, doesn't seem to be aware of this. And this actually comes through in a few cases. Like there's an episode called Weapons Grade Life, where the Christian scientist does Christian Science surgery, and the viewer's like, we're like about to sit down and watch this Christian surgeon just pray. And he does exactly that, and he starts to pray over this, surgical, subject, and suddenly, like, surgery tools appear out of the air, and you're like, wait, what? And he's praying, God, I pray that you would make an incision to the left side of the aorta, and then the surgery tools in the air start doing that, and you're like, okay. But it turns out it's this genius kid. And Xavier immediately hates this kid. And he's like, just because you created life doesn't make you some kind of god. There's more to life than life. It's like the resentment against anyone he thinks might be objectively better than him, because this crippled kid is like objectively a great kid. It's maybe the only character in the entire, actually might be the only character in the entire show who's actually a good kid, a good person. So like he's right on the border of being an Omega. Xavier is, just because he's so clueless and he's so disliked and he's so gross, but he just keeps showing up. He just keeps wandering into town. And he has, the way he interacts with some of these characters is he is just, he is working out resentment and entitlement, which is owed to him because of his profound spiritual and philosophical wisdom, his mind-blowing insights into the nature of the world and so forth. And this entitlement interacting with his horniness is a funny combination. Vox Day warns that gammas will destroy any institution that they are given too much internal power within. They have, and the way to identify is anyone who has a secret king complex or thinks they're like the chosen one. And Xavier certainly has that. So, what makes this show so special, right? Because it's not like, pardon me, starting to come down with something, I think. It's not like Xavier is the only postmodern show out there. A lot of people have mentioned Rick and Morty as a comparison. Rick and Morty is another very postmodern show, but there's something kind of unsatisfying about Rick and Morty in the way that things just happen. There's kind of isn't a story arc exactly, other than just Morty becoming enlightened to the true nature of his grandpa and existence. Like, there is no purpose, there's no place we ought to be, everything is just randomness. And even Rick is kind of like, he's like perpetually drunk and he can't take anything seriously. He looks kind of sad in many ways. And if anything, that kind of postmodern show actually feeds into the Gamma's sense of superiority. And we're not talking here about a Nietzschean superiority because you are better looking or more competent or just stronger or actually better. It's the sense of being superior because you see through things. It's like, oh, I know how reality really works. It's the Gnostic delusion. And here, by delusion, I don't mean Gnosticism itself, which I think is also a delusion. But what's more important is the superiority that comes from believing that you alone can see the secret nature of things that the sheeple can't see. That kind of superiority is the Gamma superiority. And Rick and Morty and many other postmodern shows kind of feed into that a little bit. It gives the viewer the impression of superiority for understanding the nature of reality or something. Xavier kind of doesn't do that. It doesn't target everybody. Well, I mean, it does, but it targets one person in particular, and that's Xavier himself. And Xavier is exactly that person. He's the person who thinks he's better than everybody because he is spiritually enlightened and has these mind-blowing philosophical insights that are mostly just stupid platitudes of tautologies. The show is actually targeting people who think that they're superior because they understand reality and stuff. And makes fun of that every episode because it's making fun of Xavier. That's who Xavier is. He's the secret king who every town needs to become enlightened. He distills his wisdom. And like the first episode is just this. It's just him coming in, asking a stupid question, breaking a computer with his stupid question, and trapping everyone inside a computer glitch. And then the solution makes things even worse. Most postmodern shows, and this is particularly true in like fantasy fiction. There's a particular book that Vox Day mentions called The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. That's like a particularly bad exemplification of the secret king gamma wish fulfillment fantasy. And I think a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, but some people sort of sense the inversion of reality that these nonetheless very popular fantasy and science fiction sort of gamma wish fulfillment stories have, because gammas tend to be very literate, very well read, oftentimes, not always, but more so than alphas. So there's a market for stories that sell gamma wish fulfillment, and maybe more to the point, gammas are maybe more likely to buy wish fulfillment fantasy stories because they can't fulfill their wishes in real life, which is what an alpha would do. An alpha would just, I want to do something, let me create a business or an organization and make it happen. Gammas are more prone to fantasy escapism. But, we live in a world that is filled with these stories, and sometimes those stories can strike us as being a little bit off in some way. And so Xavier, Renegade, Angel flips the flipped narrative. Because in the gamma wish fulfillment stories, reality is flipped. The secret king wins the girl, the alpha is really the bad guy, and, the girl, who Vox Day notes is almost always like a redhead for some reason, just throws herself on this otherwise not sexually forward, this very, he's like a good feminist, right? Reluctant even gamma protagonist. And so he gets the girl, not like the mean jerk alpha. It's like Revenge of the Nerd stuff. And, that is, of course, an inversion of reality. And so Xavier, like, flips the flipped narrative, but so hard, it's like, it reveals the absurdity at the same time. It's like it rights a wrong in a ridiculous fashion, or a narrative wrong, I should say. And I think a lot of people enjoy that. I think that's a lot of what's driving the the enjoyment of the show, because I had never heard of this show until it was mentioned to me in this request, and digging around, it looks like it's got quite a cult following, despite only having 2 episodes and coming out in 2007. There's people who really like this show. So I think what we're doing, at least in season 1, is we're making fun of the gamma archetype, who would normally be the protagonist, and he's made the protagonist, but he's this protagonist anti-hero that inverts the inverted standard story arc of this kind of person, and it's fun. It's fun to see through, and it sort of takes us back to the caricature subject from last video. Actually, can we see reality more clearly through caricatures than through like accurate depictions? And I think in this case, because it's distorting an existing distortion, and in doing so revealing the distortion in our regular stories that we can often mistake for reality. And it's doing so in an entertaining and very densely humorous manner. And it's fun. And I think people who see the gamma tendencies of many New Age spiritualist types, there's a never-ending line of sexual abuse from like gamma authors. I think Neil Gaiman is the most recent one. I shouldn't pretend like I'm unfamiliar with the story because I follow Vox Day and he's been writing about this for some time now. I don't know if Neil Gaiman was the most gamma elevating author out there. There are others, but it's a persistent pattern. These gammas who think they deserve women because they are so nice and so thoughtful and so intelligent, and women really they keep falling for these bad guys, these jerks, these alphas. It's fun to see that instead of being supported by most stories, mocked and kind of ruthlessly trounced in a lot of the nonsensical spiritualism that comes along for the ride with that personality. So anyways, we'll get back to Xavier Renegade Angel for season 2 sometime next week, and we'll see if there's anything else to add here. So thanks so much for listening, and take care.